also think about internal versus external. And controllable. Sorry, I think I just misspelled something. Versus not. Okay, I'm just going to get some masking tape. Throw one out there in terms of what they could see as a risk or a threat or an opportunity associated with this scenario, with this program? Sure. Yes.
Mission driven.
Okay. You want to talk about that at all? About how you think the impact, what that impact is?
Well, if the mission is to deal with adult learning, and I can put it into, I think, like family literacy or literacy for youth.
And what do you think that does to an organization when they start adding that in? Do you see a benefit at all to keeping that, to allowing that in the way that it adds on to?
Well, I think just from my own point of view, the teaching of adults is very different from the teaching of children or youth. So the methodology would be rather different. So I think that would, and if they haven't made that leap or are using the same methodology, perhaps, I would see that as a threat.
Does anybody want to pick up on that?
Well, it says that, sorry.
When you're talking about curriculum, and you're talking about the redevelopment of curriculum and a working curriculum and the resources to be able to do that, it's important, I think, as when we're looking at risk management or what risk be, that we're able to then match each of those learners and what's going to need to happen.
Match.
When we're looking at curriculum and how to modify the curriculum to make sure that the modifications are happening are fitting the needs of the learners.
Okay, got it.
One thing though, they said that the program has expanded from 40 hours to 8 months.
Yes.
So then we can see that they have done some initial work. Their 40-hour program, depending on the time span, say if those 40 hours was extended over 6 months or if those 40 hours was extended over 1 month, would indicate the level of relationships and awareness that they would hopefully have with that community, because it is a new community. But it looks like they're working with the library, they're extending the number of sites that they have, they're extending perhaps the kind of volunteers they're working with, and the level of experience that the volunteers have. So hopefully the volunteers are the people who are, connecting to the youth. So I guess what I'm saying is that from their initial 40 hours of experience, that they've chosen to expand that program based on their understanding, their success, their target, and some kind of tangible benefit as an organization. There must be a reason why they are stepping out of their mission scope, so that there is a potential for innovation, for new partnerships, for invigoration into literacy and community. Maybe they're trying to meet adults who are between 18 and 25, or so I would evaluate what are the potential gains, and so why are they choosing to extend themselves in this way?
Good. And it seems.
Sorry, I think the guy at the back was next. Sorry.
You haven't mentioned this, and I don't know if it's appropriate, but it would strike me that one big challenge is managing expectations, and that has to be part of the risk management thing.
That's true.
And it relates to a whole host of these things. I mean, you're expanding time, you're expanding scope, you're working with partners that you may not have worked with before. I mean, there are a whole host of imponderables here, which would require, I would think, very skilled communications on a fairly constant basis. voices, lots of feedback. And as I say, managing of expectations. This is a pilot project. What do people think is going to result in the end of the day? Where does it lead? Et cetera, et cetera. There's just lots of stuff there.
When I look at this slide, I think I forget, because I believe you mentioned this, that Parkdale Project Read really isn't the lead organization on this Learn Through Hip Hop. Like, I look at that slide and I think, wow, they've like expanded so quickly and all this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But that's really not the true story. The true story is that, well, I don't want to say truth at all, but anyways, that they're partnering, that they're leveraging other people, other organizations, proven whatever, so that what looks like this significant expansion may not really be so significant.
Well, let me pick up on that because it's actually true. The program was started by another organization that has engaged with other partners to help deliver it, to expand it, and to really add to the innovation of it. And the other thing that's interesting about it is that Project Read partners with George Brown around academic upgrading and the ACE curriculum. And the first phase of this program was used to make a bridge there around that academic upgrading and with the George Brown program. I'm not sure how that worked, but there was a cross collaboration that fit with their academic upgrading mandate for their activities, which I think ties it closer to the mandate and to the mission. I think we've got a couple of
I'm wondering about evaluation, which I think is a critical piece. So taking a look at what's happened so that it can, because that certainly can affect funding, can affect budgeting for the organization. And then also the predictability of possible mishaps and for things to go awry. And then having to cut staff because we never know with funding, which is a huge risk for us.
So are you saying that looking at the results of evaluation would help to anticipate the risks and plan?
Exactly. I think there's an internal piece to evaluation. I think there's then an external piece, looking at the partnerships, and it needs to go. It's a two-way street.
Okay. Sort of more of an approach to risk management than it is a risk per se, but I think it's a very good point.
I could just add to that one. This is a reputation point that if a lot of you can't tell where the funding that they get, as an example, from NLS, which is now OLES, where that would go to, but quite often it's to some of the administration, whether it's supposed to or not. So if the reputation of the organization becomes highly swung towards working with youth when their mission and the rationale for their funding is for adults, then they might lose on some funding, but while at the same time they would be opening up avenues for other funding from organizations that are focused on youth that they may not have worked with before.
So really opening up potentially new kinds of partnerships and potentially enhancing the reputation. What about the notion of, let's talk a bit about the people risks and the physical risks. I think there's some key indicators here that some of that might be happening. And let's talk a little bit about working with at-risk clients and what that means about taking at-risk clients out into the community and having events like concerts. We want to talk about that?
Could I ask if your
Insurance.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I'm wondering, is it taking place in the schools?
No, it's in the libraries, the public libraries of
So
Toronto.
it's in the library.
But
But the
also,
same business, you're dealing with vulnerable populations, and you're using volunteers.
yeah.
And all kinds of security issues around that.
About moving clients or?
Well, about what kind of volunteers you're using, big background checks, police checks, all kinds of things I can see, to make sure that you're making sure that you're never using volunteers who might be an absolute threat to the children.
Which lends itself to insurance issues.
Right, and it never, the business of one-to-ones or a loan or any of all of that sort of, comes into play, particularly in vulnerable populations, but in particular with youth and young people. But I can see the opportunities, I can see what an opportunity this was as a feed mechanism to the ACE program. As feeding into, as an actual sort of, trajectory there. I can see a big
Margaret,
opportunity.
sorry, a feed mechanism?
Feed, feeding
Like a
into
feeder.
it, along the trajectory right into adult, ACE, adult, so on. But fraught with all kinds of security issues.
Well, I think that the other side of that risk too is the opportunity for peer support and positive role models that come from bringing in those volunteers who have expertise, been successful, and bring that back to the youth in this community, which I think is really an essential part of this program.
Thinking of burnout as well, which is also a huge risk in our work. The amount of hours that are happening, the feeling overwhelmed with everything that's required in the position, dealing with teenagers. The burnout to that I could see would be quite high.
I think I'm glad you raised that issue because to me, that's on the sort of, that cusp of innovation versus stress. So where you've got a great program that works on so many levels, but really, it's going to take a lot out of you to make it run well and to make everyone in your organization confident that it's been planned well and executed well to mitigate against risk. I think that adds a pressure. And certainly I think there's a logistical pressure about trying to bring together the volunteers and the opportunities for the clients to go out and work, go to a music studio or perform in a concert.
And I think in the stress at a governmental level, the pressures put down, from whatever ministry that you're working with, because you're wanting to ensure that you're doing everything correct, so that, and I hate to say it, sorry for any TCU or other ministry workers here in the audience, but it's that we have to make sure our T's are crossed and our I's are dotted, and when that doesn't happen, there's a risk of losing funding. So I'm just thinking about the pressures from a governmental level.
Can anybody talk about that, about a program experience they've had where they've engaged with the risk management concerns in how they've worked with their funder around program delivery? Are there some good stories or some bad stories going on? Or do people find that that's not really actually talked about? Or you're keeping your bad stories to yourself?
Yeah, there's where the learning is.
I know in the community-based sector which I come from, there's a large issue around one-to-one. Working alone is a major issue, and in particular in libraries, which are open, but the program is within the library. Things like confidentiality, security. I know that there's a lot. We have been advised to attend a United Way, learning on risk management to do with that.
So the notion of public spaces, shared information, confidentiality.
Working alone with a student, even within a library setting.
I'm not really familiar with what the term for that is. It's like personal.
Well, I think it's possible that the funders don't necessarily know what the learners, the demographics necessarily. So we say they're adult learners, but at what age does that in fact happen? So I think that it's possible that our funders sometimes think that we're doing something. Are we teaching deaf children, for example, in our stream, or deaf adults? When we say deaf youth versus deaf adults,